طيب، بارك الله فيكم. I'm gonna have to skip the video again, I'm afraid. Bear with me on that note. بارك الله فيكم. Inshallah, we'll make a start. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد طه الأمين، وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين، ومن اتبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. اللهم لا سهل إلا ما جعلته سهلا، أنت يا حي يا قيوم تجعل الحزن إذا شئت سهلا. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا، وانفعنا بما علمتنا، وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعل نياتنا خالصة لوجهك الكريم لله تعالى. I start by praising Allah, the Exalted. I ask Him to raise the rank of our Master Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Likewise the rank of his kind Al and his noble companions. And may Allah, the Exalted, grant us all the sincerest of intentions. Thereafter, we're going to continue, insha'Allah, from where we were. The author, if you recall, may Allah raise his rank, after having given his son an overview of how to attain piety, what one needs to do in terms of the acquisition of the religious knowledge, how to spend one's time to get there, what to do and what to avoid. In the last section, if you recall, he was giving him examples of individuals who had reached such ranks, that not only was he saying this is how to do it, he was informing him of people who had gone and done just that. Those who had spent their time in acquiring religious knowledge and applying it and spent it in obedience to Allah. And said to him that these particular individuals, particularly from the Tabi'een, who he mentioned four in particular in the last session, he said, look to them and see how they were. That if you want an example of how to attain that piety and who to follow, then look at these individuals. Partly to see that what I'm telling you and advising you, O son, is not something out of your means. This is not something unattainable. People can become pious. People can attain a high rank and have a good status in the hereafter. And look, I'm showing you and guiding you to individuals who have, as they say, been there and done that. And so we continue on now in this fasl section 13, inshallah, where the author starts saying to his son here, وَقَدْ عَلِمْتَ يَا بُنَيَّ أَنِّي قَدْ صَنَّفْتُ 100 كتاب فمنها التفسير الكبير 20 مجلدا، والتاريخ 20 مجلدا، وتهذيب المسند 20 مجلدا، وباقي الكتب بين كبار وصغار يكون 5 مجلدات ومجلدين وثلاثة وأربعة وأقل وأكثر. He said, you know, my son, that I have authored 100 books. So if you look at the timeline of Ibnul Jawziyy, rahimahullah, when he's saying to his son that he's authored 100 books, this shows us that this particular text was penned by Ibnul Jawziyy, rahimahullah, during around the first quarter of his knowledge journey. For he informed his son that he had authored 100 books during his life. But that was up to this point, meaning that up to here, by the time he was writing this book to his son, he had authored 100. The reality thereafter was that he authored around 519 books. So even after this one, he continued to live on and he continued to author books, and over 400 after this one. So up till here, he is listing some of what he has authored to his son. Again, not to boast, not to show off, look what I've done and look how much I've achieved, but to say to him, you can take advantage of these. They're already there. You don't even need to go and look and search and buy and borrow, etc. Your father's books are here for you to use and benefit from. And he mentions among them are At-Tafsir al-Kabir, which is the large tafsir of the Quran that he wrote, which consists of 20 volumes. At-Tariq, referring to Islamic history, 20 volumes. Tahdhib al-Musnad, referring to a book in Hadith, 20 volumes. 20 volumes. If you just reflect on that for a moment here, that how did these people used to write books in the past? What did it take? It wasn't as simple as typing, just writing with a pen that has ink. Even nowadays, it's become easier with, I've not tried it myself yet, but where you can dictate and certain apps will write down for you what you have said. Very easy now to be able to author and scribe certain texts. But back then, firstly, to get something to write on wasn't easy. And after that, finding something to write with was not easy. It wasn't a case of, refilling cartridges, or as we said, one pen that retains an amount of ink in it. These pens, perhaps seen some of the olden movies that, it's a piece of wood almost that's been filed down that has to be dipped into an ink bottle, then perhaps dried a little bit, then you write an amount, then you dip it in again, and then you write it, and you might have to, again, sharpen it down perhaps if it's not quite writing properly. The ink might run out, so you need to go and fetch some more. This is all costing as well. And the effort then that must have gone in to writing this amount of books. Clearly, he'd spent a lot of effort. Clearly, he was dedicated. Clearly, he didn't have time to waste. He was exerting the time that he had, truly exerting the breaths that he had given to him by Allah in obedience to Allah. And these were the fruits. And not only the fruits in terms of he managed to get that much done then, but people are still benefiting from his books nowadays. That, as we're going to mention, his son largely did not benefit from these words. The effort that he put in to advise his son and guide his son and direct his son did not have the desired effect on him, but yet here we are benefiting, 100 years or later from a book that this great scholar wrote. So the effort he put in did not go to waste. It was for his hereafter. And so he's mentioning, he wrote some other books, some small, there's an S missing there, which we'll add later, and some large. Some had five volumes, 2 volumes, 3, 4, or less or more. And so he's not writing tiny booklets. This one that he's wrote, that we are going through, is a small one. But we can see some of the other books that he's wrote, they are, chunky in size. big books. The one that he mentioned previously in the text, Sifatu Safwa, which he wrote, that itself is 2 volumes, and not like 50 pages per volume. These are meaty books. And so a person should appreciate the efforts that the scholars before us put in to maintain this knowledge and spread it. And so it reached us, which again raises the question, what are we doing to ensure that the knowledge continues on to the generations that come after us? How is the knowledge that I learn going to be passed on, to my children, to my students, to my family members, to the Muslims at large? And if I don't put in the necessary effort, what might happen to that knowledge? And so one should reflect on things like this and make the effort to step up where they need to. So obviously, as we said before, first acquiring the knowledge and putting the effort in for that, and then eventually making the intention to pass it on to the other people. The author said, كفيتك بهذه التصانيف عن استعارة الكتب وجمع الهمم في التأليف فعليك بالحفظ وإنما الحفظ رأس المال والتصرف ربح واصدق في الحالين في الالتجاء إلى الحق سبحانه فراعي حدوده. قال الله تعالى إن تنصروا الله ينصركم فاذكروني أذكركم وأوفوا بعهدي أوف بعهدكم. He said to his son, I urge you to memorize. There's, I believe, a line that's missed in English, which is that I have sufficed you with these books from needing to borrow books from others and putting effort into author. And I've done all this for you. So you don't need to, after the efforts I put in, go out there and look for other people's works or put effort into author books yourself. It's already been done for you. All you need to do is learn what's in there. And then he said the way to acquire that knowledge, he said, I urge you to memorize. He said memorization is the capital. When you have an investment in something or you want to put money into something, you have your capital, your starting point, your base, your foundation, upon which the other layers are built. So in this context, the other layers of knowledge are built for memorizing what we call the mutun. So for example, if we said the saying of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, كان الله ولم يكن شيء غيره. That's what we call a matan of a hadith. And sometimes the scholars would write brief texts for the students to memorize, and then they would write bigger explanations on these short texts. So these shorter texts are what they would sometimes call the matan, the foundation. Like that's where the judgments are gathered. And memorizing them helps to understand the religious texts and also recall them. If you want to recall a particular judgment, how are you going to be able to do that if you haven't memorized it in the first place? How are you going to be able to call upon it when there is a need for the judgment to be applied if you don't memorize? Not everyone has their books with them all the time, or access to their OneDrive or Google Drive or USB or whatever it might be. And so there should be an effort being put in to memorize. Scholars of the past, this is how they recall the information, and they relied upon it more than books. Books can be misplaced, can be lost, can be destroyed. Even when it comes to the technological storages that people have. I lost my USB, my laptops crashed, or something happened, everything got deleted, or a virus is hit, and the like. These are not far-fetched occurrences where the knowledge, yes, you might have it stored somewhere, but it's gone. And if you never had it in your heart, then it's gone from you as well. So he said memorization should be your basis, your Ra'sul Mal, as it's mentioned, your capital. So each and every one of us should be memorizing some parts of the religious knowledge to act as a base for us. If I want to recall, just imagine that you meet someone who is relatively new to learning, or they're new to even Islam, and you meet them, and perhaps it's an off chance. You weren't necessarily expecting to meet them. You might bump into them at the airport, you might bump into them in a cafe, and the like. You get to talking, and you mention how it's necessary for us Muslims to learn the religious knowledge and the like. And they say, okay, like what? Like what? What are you going to say? Are you going to say, well, hang on a minute, let me just pull out my laptop and I'll tell you. Um, I don't have my laptop with me. It's at home. Can we rearrange? When are you next free? The person sat in front of you now, asking you what, like what? Are you telling me that I should know about Islam? What knowledge am I missing out on that you're telling me that I should know? And you're saying, well, not now. I'll tell you later. At some point, are you kind of telling them, well, you don't know it either right now? And you missed out on benefiting this person right now. You might not see them again or get the opportunity again. There's nothing you can recall, no information you can give, nothing you've memorized, the 13 attributes perhaps, the meaning of the first testification, the integrals of wudu and prayer, something that you should be able to call upon to benefit this person that might be sat in front of you saying, I'm willing to learn, tell me, teach me. And you can't because you don't recall anything. That would truly be a sad situation. So he said, memorization is the capital and fulfillment is the profit, ribh, meaning the implementation of these sciences, different types of religious knowledge. This is how one profits from them, benefits from them. And be truthful, he said, in both situations, in resorting to the true one, the exalted, referring to Allah, meaning that both situations, which situation? The state of memorizing and the state of implementation. Be truthful in that, be sincere in that. When it comes to trying to memorize, firstly, put the effort in and do it for the sake of Allah, not so that people can say this or that about you. And likewise, when it comes to applying it, do it with the proper intention. Be truthful in that. Observe his rules. Because if a person does not obey Allah, commit sins, this can have an impact on some of what you've memorized. Why? Because people sometimes do not reflect and realize truly that the sins that one commits have a consequence. that you might not feel something tangible, that you disobeyed Allah, you committed some ghibah, you stole, you did something unlawful with your hand or foot, or inserted into your stomach what you should not have. There's not an immediate pain or suffering or hardship that befalls you. So you don't feel much physically because of the sin that you just committed, and therefore you might think, okay, well, not much happened here. Like almost like, well, that was all right. That wasn't that big of a deal. That I not being struck from the ground, lightning didn't strike me. I didn't get, my head didn't blow up, for example. Okay, and you might go along and go on with your day as if nothing's happened. But those sins have an effect. The scholar said, "Al-ma'asi laha shu'um." They have a consequence. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said in a hadith that a person might be prevented from some sustenance, some rizq that he otherwise would have gotten because of his sins, because you disobeyed Allah. And other consequences are mentioned by the scholars and the religious texts. And among them are that you might forget some knowledge that you had memorized. Ever reflected about judgments that you had learned, and then you can't remember them? What you thought you had memorized so well, you can't recall it now. What you had put effort in to memorize and master, and you knew it so well, then it's gone. What was it again? I knew it. I memorized it. I recalled it the other day, but right now you don't. Ever wondered why? Yes, weak memories and the like, and perhaps older age for some, but it really might be that you weren't paying attention, and the sins that you allowed yourself to commit, this was one of their consequences. It's not a light thing then that you disobeyed Allah. Look how much effort you put in to memorizing these things, and yet they might go because you did not observe the rules of the religion. Look how diligent and intricate and detailed Ibnul Jawziyy is being with his son to give him the full lowdown how one should act and be as a Muslim. He continued and quoted the verse that Allah, the Exalted, said what means in verse 7 of Surah Muhammad, that if you support the religion of Allah, Allah will support you. How might you support it? By teaching its rulings, financially, donating to a mosque or a center, or in a way to um, upkeep or facilitate the teaching of religious knowledge through the students or the teachers that you might be sponsoring, for example. And as a result, Allah will support you. When you require assistance and aid, you will find it in those times. And he also quoted verse 152 of Surah Al-Baqarah, which means, remember me, I Allah, I will reward you. That if you remember Allah in terms of maintaining the boundaries of the religion by also doing dhikr, mentioning Allah, then Allah would reward you for that. And also the author quoted verse 40 of Surah Al-Baqarah, which means, fulfill my covenant, I will fulfill your covenant. Didn't we take a covenant to only believe in Allah and worship Him, and do not take or associate a partner with Him? And if we maintain that and fulfill that, then Allah would grant us paradise. As it's, one might say, we do our bit, and Allah Ta'ala will keep the promise that He made to the believers that they will get paradise for their obedience. He said, وَإِيَّاكَ أَن تَقِفَ مَعَ صُورَةِ الْعِلْمِ دُونَ الْعَمَلِ بِهِ فإن الداخلين على الأمراء والمقبلين على أهل الدنيا قد أعرضوا عن العمل بالعلم فمنعوا البركة والنفع به. He said, I warn you against stopping at the framework of knowledge without practicing it. Meaning, don't be among those that look like they are applying the knowledge. They've got the surah, the framework, the outline of those who are being obedient slaves, because it looks like they are praying. Or looks like that they are on a good state, but they don't practice the knowledge that they have. That many people have learned what is correct and know right from wrong, but they do not practice it. They don't apply it. He said, I warn you from that or against that, that don't be among those, I spoke earlier, but don't be among those who learns but doesn't do anything with that knowledge. So don't fall into the description that came in the book of Allah, the Exalted, wherein it was revealed, أَتَأْمُرُونَ النَّاسَ بِالْبِرِّ وَتَنْسَوْنَ أَنفُسَكُمْ, which means, do you order the people with goodness and yet you forget yourself, or yourselves in plural? Meaning that you're telling others to do good things, but you're not doing it yourself. Telling others to apply the knowledge, but you're not doing it yourself. Telling others to observe the boundaries of the religion while you are transgressing them. Don't be like those. He said, those who frequent princes, that is the high-ranking worldly people, and embark on the worldly people, have turned away from practicing the knowledge. Just recently, a brother asked me, how is it that some of these people who seemingly have knowledge are doing such misguided things? Talking about some of the more common individuals that appear on some of the social media, that how is it this person and that person, and he's turned away from this and he's doing that, for example. Many times it's the company they keep. They have seen themselves on bigger stages, platforms, found themselves exposed to large audiences. And as a result, they get taken in by that fame sometimes, the high life, as they say. And this results in them turning away from practicing the knowledge. That all of a sudden, now that they've appeared to be giving classes online, initially, the intention might have been to spread the knowledge. And then what happens is that as the number of followers increase, the live audiences increase, this person starts to feel that, okay, there's a lot of people watching me now. Let me just look a bit more dapper. Make sure my jubbah is iron. Let me just start wearing a fancy jubbah. let me start, throwing something there in the background, neaten the picture up. A lot of people watching, what I mean? I want to give them, not a unpretty side. Let me just look the part a little bit. And then all of a sudden, this is where the focus is. What do I look like? What do I sound like? How many people are watching? How many likes did I get? How many shares of, the video or the clip or whatever it might be got, because they're in that world now. These are the types of discussions that they're having with others. How many did your video get? How many did this one get? How is this one trending? Is that one? And so sometimes that might result in that person turning away from practicing the knowledge. So there's something that results in what? The author said, consequently, these people are deprived of its blessing and of benefiting others by it. But how many people are there who have been prevented from the enjoyment of knowledge because of a lack of implementation and application of this knowledge? That is, they don't really enjoy wanting to learn more. Why would a person feel about themselves, I've learned enough, I don't need to go and acquire more, I don't really feel that interested now to sit in sessions of knowledge and, increase my knowledge? Why would a person do that? Many times because they're not even implementing the knowledge they have. So why would they need or want more of it? Whereas if a person is applying everything they learn, they've learned the fundamentals, they've learned the basics, they've learned the integrals of fasting and the integrals of wudu and the integrals of prayer, but they are implementing them, applying all of that. And so they feel, look, I know this now and I'm doing it. What else can I do? What else is out there? Well, as well as the integrals of wudu, did you know there are sunnahs of wudu? Sunnahs? What else can I do? How can I get more reward? You can do this. Okay, I'm doing that now. What else? You can recite this. Okay, I'm reciting that now. What else? You can avoid this. Okay, I'm avoiding that now. What else? That this person is now enjoying learning more and more. He's getting the blessings of that knowledge. It's increasing for him. And the more you apply, the more you want to know what you don't know, so that you can continue to apply further and perform further acts of obedience. And yet, if you're not interested in learning more, then you're not usually interested in teaching people more. And so you missed out, and others miss out as well. Section 14, then. We go on to that, inshallah. The author, rahimahullah, said, وَإِيَّاكَ أَن تَتَشَاغَلَ بِالتَّعَبُّدِ مِنْ غَيْرِ عِلْمٍ فإن خلقا كثيرا من المتزهدين والمتصوفة ضلوا طريق الهدى إذ عملوا بغير علم. Still continuing on a similar theme to what he said in the previous section, where he said, I warn you against embarking of worship without knowledge. So he's talked about don't be among those who learn and don't apply. But also don't be among those that say, I want to be a good Muslim. I want to apply the knowledge. I want to do this and to do that, but without knowledge. Without it. This results in severe destruction for people. Why? Because this will result in people thinking they're doing what's good and not realizing that they're not. thinking they're doing what's right, and not even knowing if it is or not. How can a person be sure that their wudu is valid if they never learned what is the boundary of the face? How can you be sure your recitation is valid in your prayer if no one ever checked it for you? How can you be sure you've given your zakah to the right person when you never learn who are the deserving recipients mentioned in the Quran? So you might think you're doing good, might think yourself an obedient slave, and you might not be without even realizing. Didn't Allah Ta'ala reveal in the Quran, قُلْ هَلْ نُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِالْأَخْسَرِينَ أَعْمَالًا? Do you want to be informed about who are among the biggest of losers in the hereafter? الَّذِينَ ضَلَّ سَعْيُهُمْ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَهُمْ يَحْسَبُونَ أَنَّهُمْ يُحْسِنُونَ صُنْعًا. Those who think they are doing what is good, think that they are obeying Allah, yet all those deeds are in vain, lost, no benefit, no reward, no acceptance. Truly, that's loss. Truly, that's destruction. Imagine living your life thinking you were getting closer and closer to paradise, and you're getting further away from it. How much of a loss would that be to realize that one day? You see that kind of shock on people's faces in some movies where they think they're heading to that direction and they took a wrong turn and they find out later on, and the kind of uh, disappointment, or maybe more than disappointment, and that they might get. But imagine you thought you're doing all of this hoping to end up in paradise and you don't. Why don't you, or why didn't you? Because you didn't learn the knowledge. You didn't learn what would lead to the acceptance of Allah and what to avoid so as to not be unaccepted by Allah. You didn't learn. So what were you expecting? He said many people who claimed to be among the people of austerity and of asceticism, meaning that there are people who claimed to be detached from worldly things, claim to be people of the tasawwuf, not caring about worldly things and detaching themselves from luxuries, permissible luxuries. And here it's talking about the fake Sufis, many of whom have misguided beliefs, subhanAllah. But he's saying these individuals thought, let me go and, just sit in the mosque all day and, hold some dhikr beads or recite Quran, and this will be good for me. But they practiced without knowledge. If they didn't learn how to recite the Quran, if they didn't ensure that they would want to be able to pray the obligatory prayers in their time and not just do something optional instead. If they had a wife and children, you can't abandon them and just spend time in the mosque and not fulfill their religious and worldly rights as well. So a person might think they're doing something good, but without the knowledge, this can result in their destruction. He said, وَاسْتُرْ نَفْسَكَ بِثَوْبَيْنِ جَمِيلَيْنِ. لا يشهرانك بين أهل الدنيا برفعتهما ولا بين المتزهدين بضاعتهما. He said, cover yourself with two beautiful pieces of clothing. Beautiful is perhaps a strong word here, but the point he's making is that neither make you famous among the worldly people with their fanciness. Don't they have these, what do they call them, red carpet events where people are trying to outdo others with the fanciness of the dress that they wear? This one's got diamonds encrusted in it, and this one has got, gold laces or whatever it might be. He's saying, don't be among those that you wear clothes so fancy that it makes you stand out among the worldly people. Did you see what he's wearing? Did you see what she wore? Don't be among those, nor among the, make you stand out, that is, among the people seeking austerity with their lowliness. That is, don't wear clothes so shabby and ragged, or ones that have such low value that they make you stand out amongst those who have low worldly aspirations. In other words, wear what is moderate in your clothing. That in Islam, it is not good to adorn yourself with something that might result in hearts of other Muslims breaking by them seeing you. So, for example, if it is the case that you're wearing very expensive clothing, branded and whatever it might be, and there is someone who can barely afford clothes, barely afford to pay their bills, and yet you are, as I say, strutting in front of them, with these extravagant, expensive clothes and watches and the like. How's that going to make them feel that, look at my poor situation and my lowly state, and that these guys have got something like that? That it shouldn't be, it's not something good to present yourself in such a state, nor should you make it seem that you are, so detached outwardly, that is, because of what you're wearing. In the past, there have been people who just look at someone and say, SubhanAllah, this individual is so detached and doesn't care what he wears and how he looks, that maybe he's a wali. Why? Just because he hasn't combed his hair? Might be said plenty of us would come across as a waliya if that was the condition. Or, look, he's got ripped shirt on. Okay, but that's how some people think. This guy is in such a low situation. He doesn't care what he's wearing. He must be a wali. No, not true. But what the author is saying to his son, don't stand out. Don't draw attention to yourself from either party. The high flyers, and not even the lower individuals in terms of their social ranks. Be low key. Wear something casual, normal, average, moderate. Even this, he is giving his son advice in. He said, وَحَاسِبْ نَفْسَكَ عِنْدَ كُلِّ نَظْرَةٍ وَكَلِمَةٍ وَخَطْوَةٍ فَإِنَّكَ مسؤول عن ذلك وعلى قدر انتفاعك بالعلم ينتفع السامعون. He said, judge yourself at every look, every word, and every step. Think about, if I say this, do this, look at this. What would be the judgment of that? What would be my potential accountability for that? Would it be written for me or against me? He said, you are responsible for that. As Allah revealed in the Quran, وَلَا تَقْفُ مَا لَيْسَ لَكَ بِهِ عِلْمٌ إِنَّ السَّمْعَ وَالْبَصَرَ وَالْفُؤَادَ كُلُّ أُولَئِكَ كَانَ عَنْهُ مسؤولا. Allah revealed, do not speak about that which you do not have knowledge of. For surely one's sight or one's hearing, sight and heart will all have an accountability in the hereafter. They'll be asked about. So know that you're going to be judged for what you say, for what you do, for what you look at. So if that's going to be the case, then you judge yourself in this life and say, should I have done that? Should I do that? Shall I say this? What if I said this? What would be the outcome? What would be the judgment? What would be my accountability for it? For everything, he said. Then he said, people will benefit from your preaching, your advice and knowledge, as much as you benefited from knowledge. That is, in accordance with how much you apply the knowledge, the people would benefit by you. Hence, there is a responsibility there. The scholars talked about how the sincerity of the teacher, when he delivers the knowledge, can have an impact and effect on the knowledge that's being taken. So this can affect, for example, how well the students understand. It can affect how well they memorize and retain the information. And so the teacher should be someone who he himself is willing to apply the knowledge, be sincere in its application, so that when you want others to benefit from what you are telling them and the advice that you are giving them, it's more impactful. They will benefit if you benefited. If you did not apply or were insincere when you applied, and now you want to tell others to do it, the impact will not be as strong. The effect will not be as solid and as strong. It's something for one to bear in mind. And lastly, the author said, وَمَتَى لَمْ يَعْمَلِ الْوَاعِظُ بِعِلْمِهِ زلت موعظته عن القلوب كما يزل الماء عن الحجر فلا تعظن إلا بنية ولا تمشين إلا بنية ولا تأكلن لقمة إلا بنية ومع مطالعة أخلاق السلف ينكشف لك الأمر. He said, whenever the preacher does not practice his knowledge, his preaching deflects off the hearts as water deflects off the stone. Meaning, if a person was to pour water on a stone, on a rock, how much of it stays on it? How much water sticks to that stone? Very little. It deflects off, nothing gets absorbed. So the author is giving an analogy. If you want to preach others or to others, advise them, admonish them, order them, but you're not doing it yourself, then the impact of it is going to be very minimal. As opposed to if you were practicing yourself and sincere yourself, then there'll be more absorption. You'll have a more of an impact. That water would stick just as your advice would stick. So he said, do not preach except with a good intention. Why are you telling this person to do something or not do something? Are you trying to expose them? Are you trying to tell them off? Are you trying to look the part that you stepped up and said something? Is it for attention? Or is it that you're trying to bring this person to the obedience of Allah for the sake of Allah? That's why you should be then preaching. Do not walk except with a good intention. Do not eat a bite except with a good intention. Let it be that you are eating with the intention of gaining energy so that you can have enough of it to be able to worship Allah accordingly. Why would a person get up for suhoor during the days of Ramadan or the nights of Ramadan? Well, perhaps some people get up so they don't get hungry during the day. But one of the main wisdoms of that is so that you have some energy in you to be able to do good deeds while you're fasting. So it should be that you're having this suhoor meal, this food, with a good intention. And so a person should be thinking about every move they make and the reasoning behind it. And among those who used to do that and apply that so precisely was Imam al-Bukhari, that he wouldn't say anything or do anything without a reason behind it and an intention behind it. So once al-Bukhari, rahimahullah, had finished the lesson with his students and he laid down. One of his students asked and said, we know about you that you don't do anything except for a reason. You just decided to lie down. Why? Perhaps one of us wouldn't bat an eyelid if we saw someone doing that. The guy's lying down, leave him. But he went and asked. And al-Bukhari said that after the session, I was a little tired. And the area that we are in and the climate of the area that we are in is a potential for an attack by the enemies. And so I do not want it to be that we get attacked by an enemy and I am tired and unable to fight back as well as I might want to. So I'm lying down to rest and recover just in case someone like that was to attack and I would have the energy enough to repel them. This is how the man was thinking. Even these perhaps moments, minutes of rest, he had made the intention of doing that for the sake of Allah. And this is why the author said, lastly, by reading about the manners of the Salaf, the matter will unveil to you. This is how they were. This was their way, this was their path. You would come to know the reality of this world through how these great men and women navigated it. By seeing how they worked for their hereafter, you would know then how to be and the best way to be, and inshallah benefit through what you come to know of them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best.